5 years ago, when EcoChurch was launched, we set a target to reach 10% of churches, that's about 4,500 across England and Wales in 10 years. The idea, based on research, was that 10% would be a tipping point after which churches practically caring for creation would seem increasingly normal and gain its own momentum. Well, on the map that you can see, which just looks like a mass of dots, that indicates that we're well over halfway there. We now have a total of, well, actually more than 3,100 churches that have registered for EcoChurch. Over 1,000 awards have been achieved, Hereford Cathedral having recently gained the 1,000th award, a silver award for them. And EcoChurch has become a national community, learning together and stretching across all sizes and styles of church. It has also gained the strong support of many denominations as a key tool for them to achieve their own climate-related and other environmental goals. We don't have much time to go into EcoChurch in depth today, but I do want to provide a very quick overview, as I know some of you are completely new to EcoChurch, and I'll say a little bit too about where we're going to go over the next few years. But first, some context. So I say this very respectfully, that the pandemic is not the main story. I'm very conscious that today in the news, as many of you will have heard, over 100,000 people have lost their lives in this country during the last year or so. And that is a tragedy for us and globally. But there are bigger challenges that we face, and the lives that have been lost, if you like, are a wake-up call to what is coming down the line if we don't tackle climate change. Hopefully you don't need convincing as to why, as Christians and in our churches, we need to care for the environment. God created the earth, sustains and delights in it, and calls us to care for it too. And EcoChurch is a way in which the church can respond to the real crises of our time: climate change, the loss of biodiversity. These are the two biggest threats to our planet, to a fair and equal society. We have been buffeted, understandably, over the last 12 months by news of the pandemic, national politics, especially in the US, and a looming economic crisis. These, though, as I said, are not the main stories, but they are related. Evidence that the pandemic has arisen because of our own actions, as deforestation, animal trafficking, and so on, bring us into closer contact with virus-carrying animals. Partisan politics in divided and unequal societies, which climate change and environmental degradation will only serve to heighten, and striving for perpetual economic growth based on consumption. So we face the risk of extreme heat danger around the globe. Climate change is real. The last few years have been some of the hottest on record. And many countries, including the UK, are not yet on track to meet the targets of the 2015 Paris Agreement. This is a critical year for the climate. If you could just jump on 2 slides, please, Sarah. So EcoChurch is a framework to enable us to take action. James will shortly tell us more about Climate Sunday and the commitments that we're being asked to make. But joining EcoChurch will provide a great framework for the longer term of actions that we can take in our churches that will enable us to do our bit, even after COP26 happening in Glasgow at the end of this year has been and gone. So in brief then, after registering for EcoChurch online, you can start to work on an online survey which covers 5 key areas of church life, and you can make progress towards a bronze, silver or gold award, or hopefully all 3. Not that the awards are ends in themselves, but they give us a great way of measuring and celebrating progress, and they can be used as a useful planning tool as well. To go through the categories then, worship and teaching is fundamental to the whole. Teaching about creation care in church and being seen to act on it will make Christian faith and church life much more relevant to younger people in particular. A soon-to-be published report from Youthscape and Tear Fund looks at how the church could lose young people over climate inaction, but also presents us with some great opportunities. Worship, though, whatever its form, is for us all, and churches are increasingly finding ways, such as through Forest Church, Muddy Church, I think even Mossy Church, to engage new audiences. Buildings is the second category of eco-church. I appreciate that most of us have not been in our church buildings for the last 10 to 12 months, but when we can finally return, can we look with fresh eyes at ways in which we can manage and also use our buildings more sustainably? This slide shows Christ Church in Toxteth Park in Liverpool, where they have decided to meet and hold their services in a marquee. I think they have another marquee for their children's work, which sounds like a good idea. And that saves them from having to heat and light the whole building. So we know our carbon footprints will all have been lower over the last 12 months. So what new habits and ways of being church can we take forward that will help us to lower our carbon footprint over the longer term? Are there new ways in which we can reach out to our communities to create safe spaces for conversations around climate grief? And then the third category is land. And this slide is of a few photos from the garden at St James's Piccadilly, which, although a relatively small garden, they've used in very creative ways, including creating a bog garden from a couple of pots. So I mentioned a biodiversity crisis. It's also a crisis of land, how we use it, farm it, build on it, all of which present us with choices about how to care for and protect it for all of creation. The pandemic has enabled us to see more than ever how much we all need access to nature and green spaces for our mental health and well-being. So if we have church land, can we manage it for nature, plant bee-friendly plants, leave the grass unmown, create a wildlife area, put bird feeders up, encourage people to come and use it for rest and contemplation? If we don't have our own land, can we adopt a piece of local land, even an overgrown alleyway, to tend and care for it? And then the fourth section is community and global engagement. I've already alluded to it, but the poorest and most vulnerable in our communities and globally are the ones that are already suffering the impacts of climate change and environmental degradation. So campaigning through Joining Climate Sunday fits squarely in here, alongside other actions such as organising local events for people to get out and enjoy nature, maybe organising a community cleanup project, working with other local groups, wildlife organisations, getting involved at a local level, campaigning at a national and international level. And then finally, but by no means least, lifestyle is the fifth category, which often proves to be a challenging one. So this is all about how in our churches we can encourage each other in our daily lives to make changes for the better. Ironically, the pandemic will have helped us in some areas, such as reducing our travel. And now is a great time to reassess how we can maintain this in the future. But it's much broader than this too, encouraging us also to look at reducing energy usage in our homes, gardening in more wildlife-friendly ways, and crucially where we invest our money. So banks like Triodos invest money in social and environmental projects, and they offer, well, all of their offerings are ethical, but they now offer an ethical current account. But there are other banks that are doing likewise. But there's real challenges that we can all be part of campaigning for in the financial sector. And very related to lifestyle is Rocha's Wild Christian programme, which is a great way to explore our faith and relationships with the natural world. There's a monthly email with some lovely reflections, pointers about what we can do in our lives. So I would encourage you to join that via our website. Looking ahead, we believe that the next steps for the eco-church movement include encouraging newer churches and networks to come on board, facilitating progress by those churches that may be struggling to get an award. We want so many churches to go faster, deeper and faster, and enabling eco-churches to speak up together on issues like climate change through, for example, this Climate Sunday initiative. And we also hope it's going international through some of our sister organisations within the wider Rocha family, keen to roll out a version of EcoChurch in their own countries. And this way, we hope EcoChurch will make a significant contribution to nature, the church and people in the challenging years ahead. To give you an insight into how all this fits together and what it might look like practically, we're just going to share a short video from High Street Baptist Church Tring, who got their Gold Award last autumn, the first Baptist church to do so. When the video is finished, I look forward to welcoming James, who's going to tell us more about the Climate Sunday initiative.
Hi there, we're High Street Baptist Church Tring and we care about creation, so let's show you what we're doing. So not only do we celebrate festivals such as Harvest, but we also incorporate creation care into our Sunday services and into our church discipleship journey as well.
Here at High Street Baptist Church, in our kids' activities, we think about the environment and make many of our crafts using recycled materials.
Here in the kitchen, we've made a few simple switches in our care for the environment. We think about the products we use to wash up with and clean with, and we think about the refreshments that we serve. We've got fair trade coffee, tea and sugar.
So we believe that climate change is a justice issue, because it will inevitably affect the poorest people around the world. So one of the things we do is look at how we can support and build relationships with charities and organisations around the world.
This is our recycling area where people from the town can come and bring things that aren't readily recycled in your home waste. So things like bras, pens, stamps, and it's our way of reaching into the community whilst also serving God.
Thank you, Helen, and welcome everyone to our webinar. I'm going to share my screen just now and share with you a little about the Climate Sunday initiative before we move on to a chance for your questions, which you can put to us throughout in the chat throughout the webinar. So feel free to pop your questions in as you think of them, and we will get to as many of them as we can shortly. So I'm just going to share my screen now. There we go. Hopefully we can all see that. So as I mentioned, I'm going to take you through the Climate Sunday initiative, which is an initiative of churches together in Britain and Ireland's Environmental Issues Network. And the Environmental Issues Network is a collection of all the major denominations in the UK, as well as the Christian charities across Britain and Ireland that are taking action on climate change and the environment. And here is 25 of those very organisations and denominations who have given their formal backing to Climate Sunday. And as you can see, Rocha UK as well as EcoChurch are on there, and many of the other organisations that as churches you may be involved with, such as Christian Aid or Tear Fund. Now, Climate Sunday has 3 asks, and I'll briefly outline them now, and then we'll delve into a bit more detail on each of them. So the first is worship. And this is where we can take the opportunity to hold a climate-focused service. And we're encouraging churches to do that at any point up to the 5th of September this year. Now, congregations have already held climate-focused services, and the first were held in September 2020. And you can see a selection of those that have already taken place on our website. There's a YouTube link on there where you can take a look for some inspiration. Our climate-focused services are to make the connection between our faith and action on climate change. And there are resources available on our website for every church tradition and style to help you do that. So on the resources page, you can find sermon ideas, worship and music suggestions, prayers and activities for young people and children as well. Now, what we do ask with climate focused service is that if you do plan to do that, that you let us know by registering your service, and that's free to do. And it's just one click on the website to input your details. Now, the second call to action as part of Climate Sunday is long-term commitment. And I know many of you on the webinar today are part of churches that are already a member of EcoChurch, which is fantastic. And for those that are already members, I guess our encouragement is that you would consider applying for an award or for a higher level of award if you already hold one. For churches that are not yet a member, we're encouraging them to consider joining EcoChurch or one of the other greening schemes if they're based in Scotland or Ireland, and Live Simply, which is for Catholic parishes as well. And the third call to action is Speak Up. And what Speak Up is all about is using our voice to tell the UK government and our local politicians that the Christian community in the UK wants a cleaner, greener, fairer future. And the opportunity with Speak Up is particularly relevant this year as the UK is hosting COP26 this November in Glasgow, where countries from across the world will get together to agree on climate change goals and ambitions for the years to come. So to kind of give a little bit of an overview of what this looks like in real life, I did an interview or caught up recently with Giles Goddard, who's the vicar of St John's Church in Waterloo. It's a fantastic church based in Waterloo, obviously central London. And I asked Giles why they chose to do their Climate Sunday in September last year and what it meant for them. So I'll let Giles tell you why they did that. Here we go. And just to say before I hit play, it might be worth turning the volume up if you can, because I understand it is slightly lower volume than the rest of the content. Here we go.
I heard about Climate Sunday. I was really pleased because it was something that we could just adopt very quickly. So we used some of the liturgical resources, which I think Climate Sunday have put out. And then on the day, I invited 2 members of the congregation to speak, one of whom, Nicola Smedley, has been involved with Lambeth Citizens and trying to get climate raised up the agenda with Lambeth Citizens. And the other person, Shannon Shah, has a lot of international experience. He's from Malaysia. He knows about Borneo. So he tried to make a connection between climate and climate justice, really, and the international links and how it's affecting people internationally. Yeah, and I think it was a good Sunday, really. We connected it also to harvest. So we did harvest the following week. So on the 4th, which of course is St. Francis Day, so it ties in with his concern about the environment, we talked about climate change. And then following week, we talked about the abundance of creation and gave thanks for that.
Excellent. That sounds good. And I know you're also a member, or your congregation, your church is a member of Eco Church. And I believe you have a silver award already.
Yeah.
Keen to hear about your plans for kind of future involvement through Eco Church, because one of the main things we're asking as part of the Climate Sunday initiative is that local churches commit to long-term action, which I know you do. So yeah, if you could share a little bit about your kind of next steps there.
Yeah, definitely. I think we were one of the earlier churches to get silver, and so we were quite pleased about that. And we've now been on silver for quite a long time. We're keen, of course, to go for gold, but we're in the middle of planning a big renovation of the church, a kind of £4 million renovation. In fact, we were supposed to start last year, but because of COVID, we had to put that on hold. And as part of the renovation, we're certainly planning to put PV panels on the roof and do kind of various other things which will make us much more sustainable. So we're holding off going for gold until we've finished the renovation, because I think it's a real challenge for churches, for old churches, about how you can really make sure that your building is properly sustainable. And we thought there's no point in trying before we're really ready, but it's definitely something we're committed to doing in the long term.
Amazing.
Very welcomed being part of Eco Church as well.
No, that's great to hear, and be fantastic to see another church with PV and a refurb. I think that's great. And lastly, the Climate Sunday initiative also encourages churches to speak up. So using their voice, whether it's locally or nationally. In terms of your Climate Sunday, did that lead to any speaking up, and did it also sort of spur anything within your congregation there?
Yes, it did. I mean, I think because I've been the vicar here for a long time and I'm quite involved in climate, we've had ongoing commitments to action, and I think there's a high level of engagement within the church, but which hasn't always been easy. And I think people need to hear that even somewhere like in the centre of London, where you've got a vicar who's very, very committed, it's still quite hard to get momentum all the time. Having said that, Nicola, who I mentioned, who spoke on Climate Sunday, is involved with Lambeth Citizens. They were doing a wide consultation in order to try and get an ask to all the London mayoral candidates, because they have a big assembly when they go and kind of challenge the mayoral candidates. And it was important to get a climate ask onto that agenda. And the way to do that was to have a consultation. And as a result of Climate Sunday, about 30 or 40 members of the congregation were involved in that consultation. And we're very pleased that the whole process led to having an ask to the mayoral candidates. The election was put off because of COVID, but it's going to happen this year. And so in it climate will be right at the top of the agenda. That's fantastic. And amazing that, taking advantage, I guess, of a moment locally where the church could be a voice and speak for this issue is great. So that's fantastic to hear. Thank you for taking the time today to share with everyone who's joined us on this webinar, sure, to speak about your Climate Sunday and the work that you're doing at St. John's Waterloo. So yeah, appreciate your time, and we look forward to seeing photos of that PV when the refurb's all done in a year or two as well. Excellent. God willing. Okay. Great. Cheers. Thank you very much. Thanks. Bye. Excellent. So good to hear how one church has used Climate Sunday to take action locally, and it's encouraging to see so many churches right across Britain and Ireland hold their Climate Sunday services. Here's a few screenshots from churches who've shared what they've done online, and you can see using the hashtag Climate Sunday, which is all one word. You can see what's happening on Twitter and Facebook and other social media platforms.
Our website, of course, does have that link to YouTube where you can watch services for inspiration. And we would encourage you, when you register, to share the link to your online services, if you do online services, so that you can add that to the list that's available for others to view. So those are the worship services. And again, if you've got any questions about that, please pop them in the chat so we can get to those shortly. Now, the next part of the initiative is the long-term commitment. And at this point, I'd love to invite Helen to talk with me about that. So Helen obviously heads up EcoChurch, and my question for you, Helen, is what are the synergies that you see between the three calls to action, so worship, commitment, and speaking up, and the EcoChurch program structure?
Thanks, James. Yeah, I really like the framework of Climate Sunday to worship, commit and speak up. And I think actually it really mirrors the framework of EcoChurch, which also starts very purposely with worship and teaching as the first category that underpins all the others. We know that we have a creator God who loves and delights in all of his creation on this earth, and we've got so much to be thankful for. And I think starting with praise will lead us to action. And then there's increasingly a cause for and recognition of our need to lament too for all that we've already lost and will likely lose. But I think that can lead us to hope, which we will need to sustain us. So that worship is fundamental. I think then the commitment will lead, hopefully it will lead us to commit to the whole of EcoChurch and think of it as a holistic approach rather than an exhaustive list of actions for the long term. It's not just about a set of one-off actions, but changing the whole culture of our church and committing to care for this planet for the long term. And then I think the themes of Climate Sunday that are going to be explored each month. So we've already had climate and food, and there's a couple upcoming that we're going to do at a Rocha, climate change and pastoral care, climate change and nature. I think all of the themes actually will fit really well into various categories of EcoChurch and help people to feel resourced to make good progress. And then finally, speak up. Well, the whole of EcoChurch is also a commitment to speak up generally, as hopefully others will see this and be inspired to act. That adage of action speaks louder than words. But as well as speaking up specifically, such as now in the context of Climate Sunday and COP26.
Excellent, thank you, Helen. Sorry, I think my screen froze there for a moment.
Okay.
Yeah, apologies. So yeah, fantastic. And leading on from that is the is the speak up action within Climate Sunday, and the opportunity for this really exists because of the United Nations conference, which is taking place in the UK this year. And what we've done is we have, together with all of those members that you saw of EIN and really environmental charities across the UK, including large ones like RSPB and charities from all faiths, we together are members of the Climate Coalition. And the Climate Coalition are running a common call for members of society, for businesses, churches, community groups to sign. And this common call allows us to really demonstrate to the UK government and the devolved administrations across the UK the strength of feeling and really sort of demand from the public that climate change be taken seriously and that bold, ambitious action be taken at the UN COP26 conference this year. So I'm going to share a little video with you from the Climate Coalition that just highlights the work they've done so far and explains a little bit about the Time Is Now declaration, which we are asking and encouraging churches and individuals to sign. So I'll hit play on this one, and the volume is okay on this video, so no need to turn your speakers up for this one. Here we go.
have been presented with two options, and we need to choose.
Excellent. So that video we've just watched is available for use during your Climate Sunday services if you want to promote the Time Is Now declaration. And that declaration can be signed at climatesunday.org. Right on our homepage, there's a button to click through and sign that, where you can select where you're signing from, so from England, Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland. And the text is slightly different for each of the nations, obviously directed at the devolved administrations where they exist and at the UK government as well. So we, as I say, we encourage churches to sign that as an entity, as a sort of church charity they can sign, but also as part of our Climate Sunday services, we can encourage all members of our congregation to also individually sign that. And when we do it through climatesunday.org, we are able to record and see how many people and churches are signing that common call and adding their voice to demand bold, ambitious action at the conference. Now, our campaign is going to be ending, as I mentioned earlier, on the 5th of September this year. And that's around 2 months before the conference in Glasgow. And we're going to end with a national event in Glasgow, where we celebrate all the achievements, commitments and campaigning of churches in the previous year and present those asks to government to really demonstrate the sort of license from the church and from society for positive action at the conference. So we would encourage you to register your service so that your service is able to be included in that. And we also encourage campaigning, not just by signing that declaration, but for those that want to go further. And there are many of our partners, have resources available to help churches with campaigning, whether it be locally or nationally. And a great example of that is from Hope for the Future, who are funded by USPG. And you'll see them mentioned in some of our resources. They're also promoting Climate Sunday, as are all of our partners that I talked about earlier, like Tier Fund and Christian Aid. And when we're all talking about Climate Sunday, we're all talking about the same thing. And we're all promoting this initiative and all encouraging people to register at climatesunday.org. But if you'd like to get more involved in campaigning, or perhaps your church would like to meet with their local authority or their elected representative, like their MP, Hope for the Future do have sort of one-to-one support available to help churches do that. And you can find out more about that by looking at the resources on our website. Helen mentioned earlier, we also have themed resources available throughout the year. And so far we have published a themed resource on climate and food, which Climate Stewards contributed towards. And we have also today published a resource on climate emergency, which Tier Fund have contributed to. And as Helen mentioned, coming up, Rocha are contributing towards a resource on pastoral care and a resource on nature. So every month you'll be able to see those coming through on the website. So you can also sign up for emails on there to be notified when resources become available. And next up, I thought I'd show you the website I've been talking about. So this is the homepage here. I'd encourage you to take a look at this and share it with those in your church that may be interested in considering holding a Climate Sunday service or speaking with your church leadership about doing so. And that is sort of the overview. I think we want to leave enough time to answer your questions. So before we do that, we will have a short poll just to understand and see where people are at in terms of EcoChurch and plans for Climate Sunday and plans for speaking up locally or nationally as well. So just encourage or just ask Sarah, my colleague, to run the poll when she's ready. Here we go. So there's 3 questions for us. And the last of those questions is multiple choice. So you can select several answers on the last one there. And we'll see your answers as they come in. So it'll be interesting and give you a little view of how people are voting. So great to see over 70% of people there planning to hold a Climate Sunday service this year. And over 90% of people so far are inspired to progress to the next level of EcoChurch award scheme, which is fantastic. And over 85% of people there saying that they are either planning to sign the Time Is Now declaration or speak to their church about signing it. So we've going to just keep this poll open for another minute or so to allow those that are still to vote to do so. Really fantastic to see there that over 90% inspired to progress with an award, and 4% already have gold. So that's really encouraging to see. We have churches who've already achieved that on the call today, still looking to take further action. Okay, fantastic. So you can see the results there. Thank you, Sarah, for running that poll for us. And now I think we'll move on to your questions. Thanks for everyone who's already popped a question in the chat. So I'll just invite Helen to join us again, and we will work through those. I'll let you start, Helen.
Thank you, James. That was really helpful to hear a bit more about Climate Sunday, and to all of you. It's really encouraging to see those polls come in. James, just while I'm casting my eye down the questions that are coming in, can I ask you a question? I think we may have, those polls may have answered it to an extent, but what does success look like for the Climate Sunday initiative this year?
Sure. So we have a few objectives, and I think one of the main objectives is to reach churches who've never taken action on climate before. So as a campaign, we are reaching out to thousands of churches across Britain and Ireland who are not yet members of any of the 4 greening schemes. And we're suggesting and encouraging that they consider holding a Climate Sunday. We're also very, very keen that we finish the year with many, many more churches joined up to greening schemes, and those churches that are already members taking further steps to look at applying for awards or progressing to further awards. So overall, our sort of big objective is to aim for 20% of churches taking part in one of the 3 actions that we talked about tonight this year. And I think if we can come close to that number, it's really a huge amount of people across thousands of churches. And I think that demonstrates how important this issue is to the Christian community, and particularly, because of the climate justice element that drives the importance of this issue. We really do hope that by demonstrating that to government, it will give them the boldness to go further than they already plan to do so. So I guess that's what we're aiming for. And the earlier people get involved, the greater the cascade effect. I think when people see other churches in their localities taking part, it encourages and inspires them to do so as well. So For those of you that are running Climate Sundays, I'd encourage you to share that you're doing that on your social media, share that you're doing that with Churches Together groups locally, and really see this take off over the coming months.
Thank you, James. That's so encouraging to hear, and yeah, what a vision for this year. Well, we've got quite a few questions coming in. We've got about 15 minutes or so. We will try to get through as many of them as we can. I think the first one is for me, an EcoChurch question. So the EcoChurch Bronze Award is largely within the control of the church community, but the challenge with silver and gold is that it requires evidence of wider engagement, and that's much tougher. How best to engage with people who don't come to church and have no interest in it? That's a really good question. I think the first thing I'd say is that even at silver and gold, it's still within the control of the church, in the sense that you know how much you're doing and how far you can go. The sort of self-assessment is still there at silver, though we do come out and do an assessment at gold. But the real question here is about engaging others more widely, and that's a great question. I think caring about the environment can actually unite us with so many people around us who might ordinarily not be interested in faith or not have come into church. I think it's been fascinating that during this time there are reports that people who wouldn't come into a church building have been joining church services online. So I think it's finding creative ways to reach others, but getting involved in a local nature group is a lovely way to do that. There's a few things coming to mind. We are doing a Churches Count on Nature initiative, running it as a pilot with Caring for God's Acre and the Church of England, though it's open to all denominations, later on in June this year. And that will really be about encouraging us to look at what's on our doorsteps, get out and literally count bugs and birds and species, a bit like the Big Garden Birdwatch. And I think something like that is a lovely way of getting more people involved, and just sort of opening the doors and the gates, as it were, of our churches there. I will stop there because there are plenty of other questions to answer, but do come back to me, whoever asked that question, if I haven't answered that fully. James, one for you. So is having the service by the 5th of September a way to raise awareness of the climate change conference later in November? And sort of behind that, does it matter when you host a Climate Sunday service?
So these services, or the entire initiative, I think, exists because of the opportunity that's been created by COP26 being hosted by the UK this year. Because of that, the significance of what the UK government does in terms of its own action and commitments on climate is particularly important, because as the host nation, the other nations which attend the conference in a way will be influenced or be looking at what the host nation does. So it's of particular importance this time round that the UK government really does lead the way, because that will impact on the contributions from countries around the world. But equally, the conference being here will mean that climate change and COP26 are headlines in newspapers in the run-up and during that conference, which creates an opportunity for the church to engage on this issue, because it will hopefully by that time of the year be the dominating headline in the newspaper instead of the pandemic. And I think what we as churches can do is really show that this is a justice issue. This affects those around the world who are less fortunate in a far more severe way than it affects those in the UK and other affluent nations. So the opportunity, I think, is because of the conference. It's less to raise awareness of it. It's more to speak up on the importance of the issue, and making that link between our faith and action on climate is particularly important as well. Now, I know many eco churches will have done that already, But I think dedicating a particular Sunday certainly brings focus to that, and also should hopefully spur action within our congregations. And Giles gave a great example of local action that members of his congregation took that impacted the elections for the mayors in London, for the mayor in London. So looks like across the country will be different, but I'd say make the connection between something locally as well as signing the common call for national action.
Thank you, James. That's really helpful. I think the next question is probably for me, although applies equally to climate change, I think. Do you have any recommendations on how to sustain momentum with progressing through EcoChurch Awards? I think for all of us, it's probably about how to sustain momentum in taking action on climate change and on the big environmental issues when, you know, we know what an uphill challenge we face in reality. I do think celebrating progress is really important. I think I mentioned earlier, taking the time as a church to celebrate where you've got to sort of regroup and then set your goals for the next period of time. But I think too, it's really important to nourish ourselves and to get out and enjoy creation. So many of us, as I said earlier, I think have been realizing during lockdown how much we need nature for our mental health and our well-being. It was a snowy day here in London on Sunday, surprising snow, we don't get it very often. And just seeing kids in the local park just enjoying the snow. There were snowmen popping up at a social distance across the field. I think we need to nourish and sustain ourselves in moments like that, and getting out as a church community, going on nature walks when we can do that in time to come. James, there are a couple of questions coming in around dates. So I think, do we have a recommended 1 or 2 dates so lots of churches can do a Climate Sunday at the same time? So something like World Environment Day. And then I guess related to that, does it matter really during 2021 when churches hold those services?
Sure. So the flexibility is there for each church to choose when fits best with their church calendar. And I think this year in particular, flexibility around dates is key, as it's obviously very hard to plan around public health restrictions, etc. But what we would encourage is that you pick a date where you feel that you've got enough time to plan it, and pick a date where you can involve as many people as possible. It doesn't need to be an in-person service or an online. It can be either or a combination of both. And if you are working together as part of, say, a Churches Together group, then coordinating dates with others is something you could consider, but there's absolutely full flexibility for you to do whatever works best for your church. And I think it's worth saying that the advantage of that flexibility means the involvement of every tradition and style and denomination across Britain and Ireland. There are 146 different church networks in the UK, so you can imagine trying to find 1 or 2 dates that worked across such a large number of different church networks is essentially a non-starter. So we really wanted to involve as many of those networks as possible, and that flexibility has allowed us to do so. So hopefully that answers the question, but I think Helen touched there on World Environment Day, which is coming up, I think, on the 6th of June. And incidentally, that week is also the G7 conference, which the UK is also hosting in Cornwall this year. And I'm sure climate will be high on that agenda. So again, there's a sort of very public moment that will be very widely covered in the UK press. And that could be a great Sunday. That's now only sort of 4 or 5 months away, where churches could hold a Climate Sunday service. But whatever Sunday you pick, you can know that there will be other congregations also doing their service on that same Sunday. There's been Climate Sunday services every Sunday since we launched in September, and we would encourage you to just do what works best for your setting.
Thanks, James. And just a follow-up question to that, if I may. So we're being asked, can a church hold 2 Climate Sundays? So if they've already done one last year in 2020, when we were anticipating that COP26 would happen, can they do one again this year?
Of course, yeah. That's absolutely fine. I think the more focus you want to bring to this, the better. And we obviously have those themed resources coming out across the year as well on different topics. And some churches may choose to focus on a particular topic of interest. So if your congregation is particularly interested in nature, this summer Rocha's nature theme will be released, which will contain some suggestions for use as part of a church service. But all the resources more generally are there already. And those resources include service plans, for example, from the Church of England Environment Department, as well as ecumenical resources. Catine in Wales have produced a fantastic ecumenical service plan. And there's also service plans from organisations like Tearfund and Christian Aid, as well as other partners. But I'd encourage you to take a look at those. If you don't find something that you think works well for your church or your denomination, then please get in touch, because we will be adding to that based on feedback we receive over the course of the year. And we really like to hear if there's anything more you think we could make available there to equip your church to run a Climate Sunday.
Thanks, James. That's all really helpful. Thanks for flagging all of those resources. Just to say, we've got some on our EcoChurch website too, which go through all the categories of EcoChurch, and we will be updating those just over the coming months. We've got a big project kicking off. James, thank you. That's all the questions I think for you. I'm just going to end very briefly with the last one on EcoChurch, and then we will close because we're nearly at our time. How have you managed to get church members on board with EcoChurch? That is a great question. I think perhaps a good starting point is to help people make the links between their faith and nature and the environment, how much we depend on the environment, but also that it's God's gift to us, and all of creation points to it. You know, who of us doesn't love seeing a fantastic sunset and so on? So making those connections. Something that comes to mind is a church, St Andrew's in Rugby, which is another of our Gold Award-winning churches. They actually went on a pilgrimage as a church community to Assisi, and that was a sort of pilgrimage for them in learning more about the environment. And when they came back from that, they did a sort of joint community piece of artwork, which is now displayed in their church. It's like a mosaic of beautiful images of creation and what it means to them. I'm not suggesting every church can go and do a pilgrimage like that, but you know, you could maybe take that idea of a way of getting people sort of galvanized around something. But I think helping people to relate what they love in our everyday lives, and that those things are at risk, and connecting with our faith. I'm sure there are lots of people on this call who would have lots more ideas. Do join us at one of our EcoChurch conferences when these are the sort of questions that we aim to discuss. I think that is probably it. We are just coming up to 8:30. So I think we should probably close and let you enjoy the rest of your evenings. Go and get a cup of tea. Here on the screen is a set of links that you can go to. Do plan your own Climate Sunday service. Sign up to the coalition. Take action on EcoChurch, register, commit to another award. We will send round all of these links and the videos as soon as we can, not this evening, but at some point in the coming days. So do look out for that. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join with us this evening. I hope that it's been helpful and has answered some of your questions. Yeah, and as I say, that follow-up will come soon. Please do join me as I pray for us, and we will then close. Lord, thank you that you've made the heavens and the earth, this beautiful earth that you created for us to live in. Forgive us for all that we've done to harm your creation, and help us to work to restore it. Thank you for the many churches across the country that are taking action to protect and restore creation in their communities and are speaking up for change. Lord, help us to be in right relationship with you, with others, and with all of your creation. And help us to be bold and stout-hearted for the challenges that we will face. And Father, give peace and grace and mercy to all those on this call this evening. In your name, amen. Thank you.